And after that, I said how to use this flex within the form. So how to develop the form here. Yes. This is what we have seen in the last class. And after this, now let us talk about one more layout. Okay. So there is one more layout is there. So there is one more layout is there. And what is that layout is? So there is one more layout, and that layout is what? Grid layout. Okay, now there is a flex layout, and there is also grid layout. See, all these layouts are predefined. And what is the advantage of using this predefined layouts is avoiding explicit positioning, right? You don't require to position the elements. Okay, it will provide a predefined positioning of what? Elements. Flow layout is one. Flex layout is one, and one more is a grid. Grid means where you try to organize the elements by dividing into a rows and columns. Okay, same thing. See, yesterday, now if you see web page layout, so when you see the web page layout, what do you have? You have a header, or suppose assume that this is which one here? Navigation. And this is, assume that this is a, okay, assume that this is what here? Header. Okay, now this is called as which one? Navigation. And this is called as which one? Article. Okay, assume that this is which one? Sidebar. Like this. If you have this, and after this is called as which one? Footer. Okay, now. So this can be divided into a number of rows and columns. For example, how many rows are there here? See, how many rows are there here? 3 rows. This is 1, and this is 2, and this is what here? 3. So the number of rows are, how many rows are there here? 3 rows are there. And each row is divided into what? Multiple columns. Now this is a column 1, and this is a column 2, and this is what here? Column 3. So one row is having how many columns here? Multiple columns. So there is a header and there is a footer. And the row is divided into a multiple columns here, right? So how can you organize this in the form? You can organize all this by using which layout here? Grid layout. So nothing you have to do. You have to define the container property as a, you have to define the container display property as what? So there is a container display property as what? Flex. There's a container display property is what? Block. There's a container display property is what? Inline block. There's a container display property is what? Inline. There's a container display property is what? Grid. Okay, now the container display property you are changing it. So container display property you are making it as what? Flex. So flex layout, and container display property is what? Block. Container display property is a inline block. Container display property is what? Inline. And container display property you can use it as grid. Okay, now so by changing the container display property as a grid, you can organize in the form of rows and columns. By changing the container display property as a grid, you can organize the elements in the form of rows and columns, right? But till now, till yesterday we use the display property as what? Flex. But now we are using the display property as what? Grid. Okay. So till now, till yesterday we use flex, but now we are using the property called which one? Grid, right? So CSS grid. I said CSS grid is a powerful tool that allows for 2-dimensional layouts to be created on the web. two-dimensional. Two-dimensional means rows and columns. Okay, number of rows and columns here. If you want to create a two-dimensional layouts, then you are trying to use which layout here? Grid layout. I said no, grid container is it. Now, how can you create a grid? Create a grid container by setting the display property with a value of one is the grid and one more is what? Inline grid. How many display properties are there? Two display properties are there. Okay, two display values are there. One is a grid and one more is what? Inline grid. So whatever elements are there within the grid, those are called child elements of which one? Container, right? All direct children of grid containers becomes which one? Grid items. Okay, so within the grid container, you place what? Some items, or you place some elements, and that elements are called which items here? Grid items. But I said no, grid is having some properties. We'll discuss about grid properties. And grid items are placed in rows by default and span with the full width of the grid container. So grid items are placed in rows by default. Grid items are placed in rows by default and span with the full width of the grid container. For example, yes. So you are changing only one property. And what is the property you are changing? Display. So what is the display property of this here? Grid. This wrapper is nothing but container. And body margin. So margin is left margin, top margin, bottom margin, as well as right margin. So margin is a space around. So that around the page, that you can call it as which one? Margin, right? So wrapper is nothing but your container, and the container, within the container, you are displaying all the items by using which one? Grid. And the space between these items is how many pixels? 10 pixels. And this is a background color and this is a text color. And within container, you are placing each division, and the division is called as which one? Box. And this is a background color and color, and this is a border radius, and there's a padding, and one more is what? Font size, right? So there's a background color and color, border radius is there, and padding is there, and one more is font size. Okay, so this box is nothing but what here? Division, right? So what is the containers here? There is a division. So division is a container, and this container using which selector here? Class selector. And what is the name of the selector? Wrapper. So wrapper is a container or not? Yes. So this division is a container, but this is which type of container? Grid. This is a container, right? But this is which type of container? Grid. Okay, this is a container, and this container is which type? Grid. And within this container, you are trying to place how many divisions? Some 6 divisions are there. And each division, you are applying some properties by using which selector? Classes selector. And what is the name of this here? Box. Okay, each division is having some border, and each division is having background color, and each text which is there in the division is having a text color, as well as which one? Font size. So division is a container, and within the division, division is a container, and within the division there are number of what? Divisions are there, and each division is called as one. Each division is called as one item. Each division can be called as one item, right? Yes. Just to see it. I'll just try to run. But what is the default display of grid? Row wise, column wise, row wise, and row wise, and it will span. It will span with the full width of the grid container. It will span with the full width of the container. It will span with the full width of the container. Yes, just try to understand. It will span with the full width of the container. So that is by default. Display is what here? Grid. So just here. So once you run this, right? So there are some fundamentals are there. We'll discuss that. Okay, once you run this, now you can see, now by default it is displayed in what? Rows. There is a B, C, D, and E and F. But is it this division is span with the full width of which one? Container. This division is span with the full width of the container. This division is span with the full width of the container. Okay, now see by default this here. So grid items are placed in rows by default and span with the full width of the grid container. So is it this is taken full width of the container or not? Yes. So how many items are there here? 6 are there, and each one is placed in one, or each one is placed in one row. Each one is placed in one row. Now that is a display grid. Display grid. Suppose if I am writing display property as a grid inline. Okay. So there are two properties are there. One is one is a grid and one more is which one? Inline grid. Okay. So I try to change this from grid to what here? Inline grid. I try to change from grid to what here? Inline grid. So what will happen in this case? Is it span full width of the container? No. It is taken the width of which one? The width of which one? Width of which one? Division. Width of the division. What is the width of the division is defined, right? So what is the padding and font size? Okay, what is the width means that is based on the content or not? Yes. So there is A, B, C. Now it is having how many characters here? So this is divided into number of rows and columns. But how many rows are there here? 5 rows with 6 rows with how many columns here? 1 column. How many rows are there here? 5 rows with how many columns here? 1 column. That is called as which one? Inline. Inline. See here. Inline. Just try to understand. So there is a next property is an inline grid. So once you select it as inline grid, so inline grid, so it is trying to display. If you are saying inline grid, it is trying to display. See, grid gap is defined. So it is trying to display as inline or not. Yes. So the container type is taken inline grid. So the grid is having some properties. And what are the properties is a grid is having number of rows and columns, right? So when I'm talking about grid columns, so this vertical lines of grid items are called which one here? Columns. So these are called as which one here? Columns. Just try to understand the terminology. Okay, these are called as which one here? Columns. Vertical lines of the grid. These are vertical lines, right? This vertical lines of the grid is called as which one? Columns. And horizontal lines of the grid are called which one? Rows. So vertical lines are called as columns. Horizontal lines are called as which one? Rows. Okay. And there is a gap between each row and column that is called as which one? Grid gaps. The gap between each row and columns here, this is called a column gap, and this is called as which one? Row gap between the grid row and what is that? Column. So that you can call it as which one? gaps. That can be column gap or that can be what? Row gap. See here. Horizontal lines. So these horizontal lines are called as which one? Rows. And vertical lines are called as which one here? Columns. And the gap between this can be called as grid gaps. That can be row gap or that can be what? Column gap. That can be row gap or that can be what? Column gap. Now you can adjust the gap size by using the following properties. What are the properties you are using? Column gap, and one more is which one? Row gap, and one more is a gap. Actually, gap inherits two things, column gap as well as what? Row gap. Instead of giving these properties individually by using column gap and row gap, you can define this both the properties. Instead of giving these properties individually, you can define this both the properties by using one property. What is that one property here? Gap. So by using this, you can define the column gap and you can define which one? Row gap. So gap is nothing but a space between the rows and columns. Right? See here. So display is what here? Grid. And then see here. Column gap is given how many pixels? 50 pixels. And grid template columns. So you are trying to create. How many columns you are trying to create here? 3 columns. I'll tell you what is a grid template columns. Now this grid template columns is defined. Grid template columns property is defined to define number of columns. How many columns you want to create within the web page? How many columns you want to create within the container? And what is the size of each and every column here? R2. Suppose if the width of the container is some 300. If the width of the container is what? 300, then R2 means 100, 100 and what? 100. So it will equally divided into how many columns? 3 columns. If you are saying grid template columns is what? Suppose if I am writing one more if I am saying R2. Now this is total how many columns it will take? 4 columns. Total how many columns it will take? 4 columns. But here I am trying to create how many columns? 3 columns by using grid template columns. And what is the size of each and every column? Because suppose the division is done based on the width of the container. Suppose if I am writing this is 50 pixels. First column is how many pixels? 50 pixels. If I am writing second column is what? 100 pixels. And remaining is what? R2. Getting or not? So, but I want this division should take this, what do you call it, a column size based on the container size. I want to divide equally. I want to divide these 3 columns to be equally based on the container size. Because of that, you are trying to give it as what? R2. So this is defining number of columns and this is defining the background color and this is padding around the container. Container and content space can be defined by using which one? Padding, right? And then grid items are there. There is a grid item. Now this is grid item is nothing but division. What is a grid item I'm taking here? Division here. So see here, division class. What is this class here? Grid container. Grid container is which type? Grid container displays which type? Grid type. And what is the column gap is given? 50 pixels. How many columns you created? 3 columns. And the space between these 3 columns are given how much? How much? 50 pixels. Now if you run this, see here. See here. Okay. So use the column gap property to adjust the space between what? Columns. But total, you are trying to display how many items here? Alright, total how many items are there? 9. But what is how many columns are there? 3 columns. Now it will try to divide into how many rows? Alright, it will try to divide into how many rows? 3 rows. 3 into 3. Total how many? 9. 3 into 3. Now it will create a grid with how many rows and how many columns? 3 rows and 3 columns. Because each row is having how many columns? 3 columns. Each row is having how many columns? 3 columns are there. Okay. Yes. Just see here. So there are number of grid items are there. Now if you see this, okay, this is divided. Now what is the space between the columns? How much space is given between the columns? 50 pixels, right? If you don't give this column gap, so if you don't give this column gap, so is it any gap between the columns here? No, there's no gap between what here? Columns. Now you want to have a gap between the columns, just use a property called column gap. Okay, so this is given auto or not? Yes, but you can define the size. Can you define the size? No, this is given as how many pixels? 100 pixels. So what is the size of the first column? 100 pixels. Okay, but remaining two are auto or not? Yes. So remaining width is equally divided into how many columns here? Two columns. Remaining width is divided equal into how many columns? Two columns. Okay. So, but here it is given as which one? Auto. Okay. So we can divide it into either three columns. So if you want to divide into a number of columns, you just take the property as which one? Or if you want to divide into a number of columns, you use which property? Grid template columns. So you need to define the width of each and every column. Yes. In the same way, you are defining the column gap. You are defining the column gap in the same way. I want to define the row gap. So you are defining the column gap in the same way. You want to define which gap? Row gap. Then you are using grid template. So row gap. Now column gap is there, and after that I'm saying row gap, and I want row gap as how many pixels here? 50. So this is a gap between the rows as well as what? Columns. And this can be called as padding or not? Yes, this is called as a margin. This is called as a padding. So padding, you can increase this. So it's given 10 pixels, right? I'm just giving it as a 20. Now, can you see the space here? At the left side, right side, and bottom as well as what? Top. So that you can call it as which one? Padding. Margin. Margin is from here. So what is a margin? Margin is defined or not defined? Not defined. Now, if you want to define the margin, you can also define margin. So margin is given. How many pixels here? 10 pixels. Now, this we can call it as left margin, and this is a right margin. And there is also given margin at the top. There is also margin is given at the top, right? Yes. So this is a row gap, and one more is a column gap. So row gap as well as what? Column gap. So here, this is given, this is example for which one? Row gap. Okay. Yes. Now grid is also have grid lines. Grid lines are there. The lines between the columns and the lines between columns are called which lines? Column lines. And the lines between the row are called as which lines? Row lines. And the intersection of this row and column is called as which one? Cell. The intersection of this row and column is called as which one? Cell. See here, this is called as line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. And this is line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. So this line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4 are called which one? Row lines. And this line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4 are called which one? Column lines. And not only that, see here. So these are called row lines, and one more is what? Column. So grid. So display is a grid and grid template. So how many columns you are creating? 3 columns. 3 columns are there. And then just you can see here. Okay. So item grid column started which one? 1. And column grid column ended what here? 3. Suppose each item grid columns here. Just a terminology you understand. Now the grid column, see this is line 1, line 2, line 3 and what? Line 4. This is line 1, line 2, line 3 and what? Line 4. So you are trying to use a property. So this is a grid, right? So this grid is having how many columns here? 3 columns. 3 columns are there, and each item you are displaying. Grid column starts at what here? 1, and grid column ended what? 3. Grid column starts at 1, and grid column ended what? 3. But total how many items are there here? 8 are there. Okay, but you starts at what here? 1, but ended what? 3. So what will happen? Is it each item is displayed? Now, in how many columns it will display? Or it will display in how many columns? 3 columns. Here you can refer the line numbers when placing the grid items. Okay, grid items. Just here. Just try to understand. So these grid lines are nothing but the lines between the rows and columns. The lines between the rows and columns. So what you said here, grid lines. Now you can refer the line numbers when placing the grid item. See here, what you said in this example, item 1 is there. Item 1, grid column starts at what here? 1 and grid column ended what here? 3. So 1, 2 what here? Grid column starts at what? 1. So this is line number 1. This is a line number what? See, this is a 2 and this is what here? 3. It means 1, 2, 3 is displayed which item? Item 1. See here. 1, 2, 3 is displayed which item? Item 1. See lines. Just see the lines here. See the lines here. Okay. So this is line 1. This is line 2 and this is line 3. You start item with line 1 to what? Line 3. Okay, you start with what? Line 1, ended what here? Line 3. How you define that? You define it by using a property called grid column start. Started which line? 1 and grid column ended what? Line 3. Then you are trying to display the item 1 here. This is a class selector for which one? Item 1, but item 1 starts at what? Or item 1 starts at what? 1, but item 1 starts at 1 and item 1 ends at what? 3. Means how many lines it will take? 3 lines. How many lines it will take? 3 lines it will take. Now this is a line 1 and this is a line, see here, this is a line 2 and this is a line 3. So these 3 lines are occupied by which item here? Item 1. That is grid column starts at 1 and grid column ended what? 3. Suppose if I am saying 4, ended what here? 4. Now this is starts at 1, 1, 2, 3 and this is what? 4. Okay, this is a 1, 2. Now can I say this is a header or not? Yes. Correct or not? This is a header. Now suppose item, this is the item 1. This is the item 1. So can you set for which item here? 8. 8 is there? No. 8 item is there. Item 8. Now I can define this. Dot. Which one? Item 8. So grid column. Same property here. Yes. Column starts at. Grid column starts at which one? 4. Grid column starts at 1 and grid column ended what here? 4. Now this time trying to set for which one? Item 8. Now item 8. Now this is 1 and this is what here? 8. Okay, now this you can call it as a this is called as which one? This is called as which one? Header. And this is called as a footer here. So there is a header and there is a footer. So there is a header and there is a footer where you define the grid start and grid end. So this line you have to understand. Grid lines. The lines between the columns are called as the column lines. The lines between the rows are called as which lines? Row lines, right? The lines between the columns are called column lines and the line between the rows are called which lines here? Row lines, right? So this is how it is. The next one is, now this is columns. This is for columns. Now place a grid items at a row line number 1 and let it end on row line number what? 3. Now the previous one is column lines. Now this is which one? Row lines. Previous one is column lines and this is for which one? Row lines here. So starts at 1 row and ends at what? Now suppose item 1 is there. So there is item 1. Sorry, there is an item 1. Item 1 starts at what here? 1 and ends at what here? 3. Starts at 1 and ends at 3. You can see this is line number 1 and this is line 2 and this is line 3. So this item 1 starts at grid line number 1 to grid line number what? 3. So can I take this as a 4 or not? Yes, I can take this as a 4. If you see this is line number 1, 2, 3 and this one is what? 4. Line number 1, 2, 3, 4. I can increase this number of grid row ended what? 5. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4 and then what? 5. So can I take this as a navigation or not? Yes, this is called as which one? Navigation. Okay, so starts at 1. Okay, starts at 1 and ends at what here? 5. So starts at 1 and ends at the 5. So can you set the both grid column and row? Can you set both grid column and row? Yes. So I'm saying grid row starts at 1 and grid row ends at what? 5. In the same way, I'm writing grid what? Column. Grid column. Grid column what? Start. So starts at which one? 1. Grid column starts at 1 and grid column. Grid column. Grid column end. Grid column ends at what here? 3. So 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3. So this is row and this is a column. How many columns? 1 and this is 2 and this is what here? 3. And 1 and this is 2, this is 3 and this is 4 and this is what here? 5. So is it these are flexible or not? Yes. So you can define the starting line as well as ending line by using grid row start and grid row what? End. Okay, grid column start and grid column end. Can I use this as a navigation? Can I use this as a what is this here? Navigation. This is a navigation, right? Then I want 2. 2 should start it. This is called as navigation, right? I want this 2 should start at what? 2 should start at what? This is how many is taken? How many is taken? Start set. So this is row, right? So this is grid row starts at 1 and grid row ended what? 5. So I want the second item. So I want second item should start it. What is the start here? This is a 1 and this is what? 2. And it should start at what here? 3. And this is a 4 and this is a 5 and this is what here? 6. Yes or no? So then it should start at where? Alright, this should start at what? 1 is over, right? 1 and this is what? 2. And this one is a 3. Item 2 is there. For example, item 2. This is which selector? Class selector. Item 2 is there. Okay. Item 2, grid column. Grid column. Grid column. What is this here? Start. Grid column start at which one? 1, 2, 3. And grid column. Grid column. Grid column. Just here. Grid column ended. So 3 is there, no? This is 3 and this is 4, 5 and this is a 6. Grid column ends at what here? 6. Now this is defined for which item? Item 2. You can see this is, I think this is 1, 2. 2 starts at 2 or 3. Otherwise it is taken blank, right? So I just taken 2. It starts at 2. So 1, 2. It starts at 2 and then it takes up to what here? 6. Okay, now this, can I take this as a second one? Can I take this as which one? Header. I can take this as which one? Header. Now this is navigation and this is a header. So within this, can I place the links or not? Yes. Within this division, so can I place the links? Yes, I can use. What is this? Anchor tag. Okay, I can use the anchor tag and I can say this is, okay, this is about, okay, I just write about, yes, yeah. Okay, this is about courses like this. I tried to put inside this division. Now this division is having how many things here? Two things. One is about and one more is what? Courses. But this alignment is center or not? Yes, because you can see here container padding text alignment is what here? Center. Text alignment is given as a center, but you can change this alignment from alignment to which one? Left. So this alignment is left or center? Left align. Now this is about and this is what here? Courses. Okay, now so designing this is very simple than which one? Flex more. Okay, because you try to divide this into a number of rows and columns, right? Yes. So you can also use the grid template columns property. You can also define the grid template columns properties. Yeah, you understood this started 2 and grid column ended what here? 6. And grid row starts at what? 1 and grid row ended what here? 5. For example, I want to develop, suppose, very simple one. Suppose assume that, yeah, just to try to understand this here. For example, I want to develop, okay, suppose, now these are number of rows and what here? Column. Now this is, so number of rows, it is divided into a number of rows and columns. But how many rows are there here? 1, 2, 3. But whereas the first row starts at where? Or spanning. This is just like spanning or not? Yes. So first row starts at what? 1 and then 2 and then 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you have taken up to what? So row starts at 2. Row starts at 1 and it is taken up to which one? 5. Right? So this is nothing but width spanning, row spanning, and this is nothing but width spanning, column spanning. Otherwise, will it occupy the complete width or not? Yes. You can also define. I mean, you can divide into a number of rows and columns. Now you can also define grid template column property. Just now I said you. Just now I said if you want to define the number of columns, you want to define the number of columns, then how can you define the number of columns here? You can define the number of columns here. The grid template columns property. Grid templates column properties defines the number of columns in your grid layout. And it can be defined with the width of each column. The value is space separated list. You are trying to define this number of columns along with the width by separating with what? Comma. And where each value defines the width of the respective column. And if you want your grid layout to contain 4 columns, then specifies the width of the 4 columns or auto. If all columns should have the same width, then you select which one? Auto. But if you want each column should have a different width, then you define the width by separating with which one? Comma. Suppose, assume that in this case, I said grid container, and what is the display here? Grid. And grid template columns, and define what here? Auto, and auto. Means, is it the width of the column is taken automatically or not? Yes. That is based on the width of the container. Container means web page. Within the web page, You are trying to place one grid container or not? Yes. Okay, then gap between these columns are given how many pixels? 10 pixels. Gap means, I said no, this gap inherit row gap as well as what? Column gap, right? Because instead of defining the row gap and column gap separately, you can define this row gap and column gap by using a property called which one? Gap. Instead of defining this row gap and column gap separately, you can define this by using which property? Gap. And this is defined in what here? Pixels. So how many pixels are given? 10 pixels, right? And after that, grid container. Now this is a child element, right? This is a child element of which one? Grid container. So within grid container, you are placing what? You are placing which one? Division. And this division, background color and text alignment, padding, and what is that? Font size. So grid columns, container. How many items are there within the container? 8. But we created how many columns? We created how many columns? 4 columns with the equivalent width or different width? Equivalent width, but that equivalent width is defined by using that equivalent width is defined by using auto. That equivalent width is defined by using which one? Auto. Equivalent width is defined by using auto here. So once you run this, so how many columns are there? 4. So this is very simple. Now you want to, again, I don't want to tell you again the same example, right? So what is that example is, you want to display all image galleries there. Image gallery. Now you want to display the complete theme. Okay, one theme you want to display. Then you try to display the complete theme as a card. Each one is called as one card. Each cell contain one card, and each card contain the player as well as the details of that player. Player as well as the details of that player. So here alignment and everything becomes what? Easy. Rather than making it as a block or inline block or defining it as what? Flex. You are directly dividing this into a number of rows and columns. Now this makes it more easier or not? Yes. We'll also see that. Okay, we'll also see that. But we try to divide this into how many columns here? 4 columns are there. And total number of items are what? 8. Then it will try to divide this into how many rows here? 2 rows. And with how many columns here? 4 columns. Okay, 2 rows and 4 columns. Because you are trying to display how many items here? 8 items you are displaying it. You're getting or not? Yes. Then in the same way, there is also one more property. Okay, there is also one more property. Now you can also define this size individually. Sorry, you can also define this size individually. Now instead of giving auto, can you define your own size or not? Yes, but you have to define that size individually. You have to define that size what? Individually by using, yes. That can be defined in pixels. That can be defined in fractions. See, this grid template column size can be defined either in pixels or you can define in what? Fractions. Okay. Now this is 80 pixels first column, and second column is what? 200 pixels, and third one is what? Auto, and fourth one is how many pixels? 30 pixels. So it means here third one is what? Auto. For example, assume that total width is 400. Assume that total width is how much? 400. And within 400, you can see 280 plus 30 is what? 310. So 310 is taken by how many columns? 3 columns, and remaining 90 is taken by which column? Third column. Because third column, or you define the size or auto? Auto means take the rest of the space. Whatever rest of the space is there, and that is used as which column? Third column. Rest of the space is used as which column? Third column. And this is a column gap. Okay. So just If you just run this, you can see this is 1, 2, 3, and this is 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now, because first one is given the width of how many pixels? 80 pixels, and second one is given how much? 200 pixels. Okay, and third one is taken which one? Auto. And fourth one is taken with how many pixels? 300 pixels. What is it, with the same size or different size? Different size. So third one is auto here. Third one is a auto. Now, if you want only 3 columns, then take only how many columns here? 3 columns. Now you can see this is a rest of the space. This is rest of the space or not? Yes. Okay. Because of that, you are trying to use this as fourth column as which one? Auto. Fourth column is auto now. Okay. So you can change this. Now I want the third column as which one? Auto. Right? Yes. You can see third one is auto, and this is with a fixed width of how many pixels? 30 pixels. So that you can define it. Number of columns you are defining along with the width. Number of columns you are defining along with the width by using one property called grid template what? Columns. Okay, grid template columns. And what is a container display here? Grid. So you don't require to define the positions and block properties. So you don't require to define that. So there is one more property is there. And what is the name of this property? Grid template. Which property? Rows property. Now there is a column property and there is also a rows property. Now grid template rows property defines the height of each row. The value space is separated list where each value defines the height of the respective row, right? So for that, you are using one property called grid template rows. So what is grid template rows is given here? 80 pixels and 200 pixels. This will define what? This will define what? The value separate. See, this will define what here? Height of the each row. So the grid template row property defines the height of each row, but it doesn't define number of. It will not define the number of rows. It defines the height of the row. Why? Because the number of rows are based on the number of columns. Number of rows are based on the number of columns and number of items placed within each row, right? Container. Based on that, it is equally divided. So what is a grid template? Rows is given 80 pixels and then again given which one? 200 pixels, right? And this is a container. So how many are there? 6 are there. And total how many columns are there? 3 columns are there. Okay. So it means it will create a 2 rows with how many columns here? 3 columns. Okay. Yes. It will create 2 rows with how many columns here? 3 columns it will create. Now if you run this. Yes. Now you can see total. How many rows are there? 2 rows are there with how many columns? 3 columns are there. But here you define. What you defined here? What do you define here? Grid template rows. Here it is given 80 pixels and one more is what? 200. But what is this exactly 80 and 200 here? Suppose I just written row is what here? 80. 80. And then see here. The using grid template rows property specifies a size is nothing but height of each row. Height of each row. Now it is given as how many pixels here? 200 pixels. Okay. So height of each row. Suppose here I take only how many rows? For example, I don't take what is that 6 rows, but rather than I'll try to take how many rows here? How many rows are there here? 1 row, because how many items I've taken? Only 3 items. Is it 3 items are fit within each in 1 row or not? Yes. But you can also define the row height. But how you are defining this row height? By using which one? Grid template rows, and this is given 80 pixels and 200 pixels. When you are saying height, what height contain? 2 things. Is it row height contain 2 things or not? Yes. 2 things are there. What is the 2 things? What is the two things? What you have? See here, first one is, I'm just defining 10 pixels. What is this? 10 pixels I define. Okay. So template, rows, I just given 10 pixels I've given. 10 pixels is what here? Is it, this is a gap or not? Yes. So here I try to change this. To how many pixels here? Some 80 pixels I've given. What is this gap? Is changed or not? Yes. Then next one is, what is the next one? This is first one is, sorry, first, sorry. This is, sorry, this one. Grid template rows. Grid template rows, I've given how many pixels here? 80 pixels. And after that, I've given the height as how much? 200 pixels. Now, this is a height of which one? Row. This is a height of each row. That is defined by using grid template rows. That is defined by using grid template rows. Otherwise, I also give this as a 200 and 200. So each row, what is the size is given? 200. It is nothing but, this is for which row? This is for which row? First row. And this is for which row? Second row. But here, first row is given how many pixels? First row is given for how many pixels? 80 pixels. First row is given height as how many pixels? 80 pixels. And second row, the height is given how many pixels? 1. So the way how you are defining width of the column, in the same way you are defining height of each and every row. So total how many rows are there? 2 rows are there. And this is the height of first row. And this is the height of which one? Second row. Okay, if you want all the rows to be equal in width, then just define the same size, 200 pixels and 200 pixels. Now this is first row and this is a second row, right? So for that, you are trying to use grid template rows, and one more is a grid template columns. So dividing into the number of rows and columns, right? So each one which is there, or which is placed in the, each one which is placed within, each one which is placed within the grid, which is called as a grid item, is called as a grid item, right? Let us see a simple example. See here. So grid container is there. See, grid container can be anything. Don't think that grid container should be what? Division only. Okay. Grid container can be what? Image. Grid container can be what? Image. Suppose in the grid container, there is a division which contain image as well as what? Text. Okay. Then you can take both, right? Suppose, see the same thing. Shall we take that one, right? Again? Yes. Anything you can take. Suppose Amazon is there. Again is asking. If you are using more number of times, then it will ask for yes, because it will think that you are intruder. Okay, now yes. Can I take this as one grid? Can you take this as one grid? So it's having number of rows and columns. If you take this as one grid, so there is a space between the rows and there is a space between the rows and what? Columns. There is a space between the rows and columns. Now, if you take this division, this is one division, right? Now, this division container is what again? Grid. So, can you create a table inside a table? Or can I create a table inside a table? Yes. You can create a table inside what? Table. Shall we create this one? Yes. Just to see here. So grid, grid container. How many columns are there? 1, 2, and 3. 3 columns are there. So what is the first column? I'm not doing any formatting here. Only 3 columns I'm taking. So the number of columns are only 3. So this is the first column. What is the first column now? What is this now? Soft dressers, right? So deals on top brands. So there is a third one. So this is a text. So this is the text what you are displaying. So customers, most loved one, right? Right. So what you are displaying here? Text. Or what you displayed here? Text. Shall we change the background? So what is the background is given? We have given what here? No background. No background. So no background means it will take. Yes. Given the background color. Okay, now this is background color and alignment is what here? Center. Right? Then next is what? Image. You have to place which one? Image. So take image. Now take what here? Image. Say image. So I just take this as a image one. Okay. So it is a JPG or not? Yes. So here I'm taking image. Image source slash images. Sorry. Slash images. Image one dot JPG. Right? So there is an image. But is it within the row or outside the row? Outside the row. Then what do you do it? Do define the width or height of the row. Height of the row. So define the height of the row. Okay, grid template rows. But how many rows are there? Only one row is there. Okay. So you have to increase this one. Only one row is there. Same line or
Recording in
new line?
progress.
New line, right? So it is in the new line. But you want the alignment is what? Left. Is it this alignment is left or center or left? So change the text alignment. So change the alignment, right? So change the text alignment, and the text alignment is what here? Left. So text alignment is changed to what here? Left. So soft dresses. And this is a font. If you want to decrease the font size, can decrease the font size. So what is the font size is given? Yes, shop dresses, but it is at the top, right? So this is given how many pixels? 30. So this is the image. Okay. So can you reduce column size? Can you reduce the column size here? Yes. So what is the image width? Are you taking image width here? No. So can you define the column size here? Yes. So column size is given how many pixels? 400. So this is called as which size here? Column size. Now this column says, will it take again how many pixels? 400 pixels, right? So this is a column size here. Okay, now you need to reduce. If you want, you can reduce the size of the, yes. But there is a gap between the rows and columns. As just given this with how many pixels? 20. So there is a gap is there between this rows and columns or not? Yes, because this is only one. So deals on the top branch. Again, you should take one more image or not? Yes, this is another image. Save image. AMG2. Okay, so this is one more image, right? So what I'm doing now? Yes, there is one more division. So within this, again you're writing which one? Image. So source, and you can define, what you can define here? Images. Then a image 2 or not? Yes. Then give the line break. So actually this is soft dresses. So content, but this is not header, right? So content with some line break. So is it displayed or not? Yes. So deals on the top brand. Okay. Yes. Now this you can take one more. Yeah, no problem, right? Yes. Now can you take one more division, right? So there is one more division. So there's one more division means this is one more. One more division means this is one more row. So there's one more row is there. One more row, but content is not close here. Now this is one division. Oh, so you have taken on one more division. So this is nothing but next column. So one row with how many columns are there here? 2 columns. And you can define the size of this. Can you reduce the size here, right? Or we can make this as a auto, and then we'll see the pictures to reduce according to the content, right? Yes. But this is soft dresses and deals of top brands and customer most loved. But this is one more division. Okay. Now this is a grid container. And this is the beginning, and this is what here? Ending. Yes. So within this again, you're displaying. Within this again, you're displaying what? Image. But image. But within this again, there is a division. Division with the division is there with what? Class. With the class. With the class. What is this here? Grid. Grid container. So this is, we divided again this. We'll remove this. So we divided this again into number of rows and columns. We divided this again into number of rows and columns. Actually, we should take, because the size has to be defined, right? So here it is given R2. How many columns I have taken here? 3 columns. But here 2 rows with how many columns? 2 columns. So take one more container. So grid container. So grid container what here? 1. I've taken the grid container 1. Then display. Display is what here? Grid. Displays a grid, and grid template columns. How many columns are there? 2 columns. So that is auto and auto. Okay. So how many columns are there here? 2 columns are there here. So 2 columns. But we need to place number of divisions inside this. So there is one division. So this is division 1. See here. So this is division 2, and this is division, sorry, this is division 3, and this is division 4. So how many divisions are there inside this? 4 divisions. But is it wrapped or not? Yes. So grid container, sorry, 1. Grid container 1. Yes. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So grid container 1 and grid container 1. Okay. So again, you'll define which one? Yes. So the gap you define. So there is a gap. So what is the gap? Some 200 pixels. Okay. So the gap between this rows here. Okay. So you can also define the, what is this here? Background color of this. So this is the background color. So define the background color here. So I want to take the same background color. Okay. Now this you can call it as background color here, right? Yes. But how many are there here? Yeah, customer. Yes. Within this grid. Grid container, grid template, column. But how many columns are there here? 2 columns. Okay, 4 columns. So 2 columns are there, and how many rows are there here? 4 rows. But here in first row, you are displaying one. In first row, you are displaying one image. So this is the image. This is the image. I'm just writing. So this is a 3. Okay, and this is the second image. This is what here? 4. And this is the third image. So this is a 5. And this is a fourth next image. Yeah, this is what here? 6. So you are dividing this into a number of rows and columns, right? So here you have to display. So what is this here? Image source. Okay, you are giving slash images. So what is the name of this here? So number of images are there here. Image 4. AMG. Where it is stored in the same folder. Images. So images slash. So this extension is what here? JPG. So this is the image source. So this is the first image. Now you have to define width also. So then I try to copy this. So this the image 6 is there, and this is the image. Oh, sorry, 4, 5, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, and but we need to define the width. If we don't define the width, so is it moved or not? Yes. Okay, it is moved this side. Okay. So you have to define the width of this images. Okay. So we have to define the width of these images. So 2 columns are there. So you are given auto, right? Rows are given. This is a row height, right? So we have given the row height is how many pixels? Yes, 400 pixels we have given, right? But in this grid container, so here also we need to define the row height. Okay. Yes. So here images are there. See here it is divided into number of rows and columns. But we need to decrease the size of the. We need to decrease the size. The size of these pictures are not very big. These are which one? Small, right? So we define the size of this image source, and here or will define the property of an image, right? Image is source, and we define the width as how many pixels? 200 pixels. So the width of the image is defined 200 pixels, right? 200 or some 300 pixels. So this is the width of the image, right? So this one also will define. So width of the image is define how many pixels? 300 pixels. Now can you see this one now? Right. So here also we can define width of individual images here. So what is the width here? Some 200 pixels. Or you can make inline, right? So 200 pixels, and this width also given how many pixels? 200 pixels, and this width also given how many pixels? 200 pixels. Now you can see here, yeah, still we have to decrease, right? So because the number of images, now this is how you are trying to, now you have to divide this into the number of rows and columns, right? So this is how many rows are there here? 3 rows. But here you have to define the row height. So container is, so here you have to define grid template. Grid template what? Row. So what is height is defined? What is the height is defined? 400. Yes. Oh, sorry. Is a container, right? So within the container, so grid row height. So this is not completely occupied, right? So yeah, this is one row and this is another row. Yes. But here I define the image size as how many pixels here? Some 100 or 150, so that it can fit inside this, right? Customer most loved, and this is a content. Now here you can display, yes. So can you display the text or not? Yes, you can display the text within this division. So can you display the text here? Yes. What is the text here? टाइप करेंगे क्या है उसमें? So what is the first one? Women's. Right now, this is a first text here. So is the text is displayed or not? Yes. But can you change this? Yes. You can change this here, right? So this is one link. And next, this is one more division is there. And within this division, what do you have to display? Men's fashion, right? So this is one more division. So where there is a men's fashion, right? Then next is what do you have to display? Beauty, right? So within this division, Yeah, this is the content of this. Okay, right. Then next one is within this division, sorry, within this division, what you are trying to display? Home. So this is home here, right? So customer is it displayed up? What happened? Is it moved up? No. Yes. So these are hyperlinks, but here it is not displayed. So what we have to display here? See more. So in the next, so here you have to display one hyperlink by saying, yeah, what is this here? See more. But this is divided into number of rows and columns. But you have to define the styles, different styles for each division, right? You cannot define only one, but you have to define different styles for each division, right? Yes. You understood this one, but so this width is 400, this height is given 400, but here you have a gap, right? So this is a gap of which one? The row, because row height is given. What is the row height is given here? 400. But if you say align justification, then it will align within the grid, right? Yes. But see, by dividing into rows and columns, then designing becomes what here? Easy, right? Otherwise, if it is a flex layout, then alignment or positioning becomes what? Complex. But here we divide into a number of rows and columns. Because of that, it becomes what? More easy. But you can apply more styles. You can apply what here? More styles here, right? Suppose again, this is number of rows and columns. Now, can you take this as one row or not? Yes. Can you take this as one row? And this occupied how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So grid column starts at what? Or a grid column starts at what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And ends at what? 6. And this is also one grid. So this is row. And this is one row. This is one row. This is one row. Is having number of, is having what? Number of columns. Number of rows and columns, right? Number of rows and columns. But I've just defined only this. But you can have one more column, one more row you can have. Yes, this is one row. This is one row. Sorry, this is one. So division. So where is that here? Okay, now this is a grid container. And having how many divisions here? So there is a first item. This is a first item. And this is what here? Second item. And this is what here? Third item. So this is a third item, right? So this is a container. This container is having total how many items are there? 3 items are there. And the first item is 3 items means 3 columns are there here. This is the first column. And this is what here? Second column. And this is a third column. But third column again divided into how many? Again divided into how many? 2 rows and 2 columns. So I have taken the class selector as what? Grid container 1. So that is again divided into how many rows and columns? 2 rows and 2 columns. Because total how many items you placed inside this grid? 4 items are there. And all these items are what? Images. See, you can display each item as one image. You don't require to take this as one division. Because see, division, within the division you are placing what? Image. But can you place the image directly? See, can you place the image directly or not? Yes, because each image is called one, or each image is called as one item. Each image is called as one item. But you are trying to place by dividing into rows and columns. That's the reason I try to divide again into a number of rows and columns. But you can place each item inside the cell. See, cell is nothing but intersection of rows and column. Each cell you can display any item. So each cell contain one division, and within the division you can place what? Other content. But you can place directly which one? Image. You don't require to place the images. Suppose here. Otherwise, for example, see here. For example, see, take one more. Okay, take one more here. Yes. So this is taking the number of, how many columns are there here? 3 columns are there. So the number of columns are how many here? 3 columns. So that's it. Okay. So what I'm doing is here. So there is a beginning. So there is the end here. And it is closed. And this is a body. Style is closed here. This is a division. And this is what here? Grid container. So this grid container required how many columns here? 3 columns. And 3 columns are there. And each column is one, or each column is one item. In each column you place one item. Now I select here image. Image source. Okay. So I just write here images. Okay, I try to select one image. So this is one image, right? So this is one image. There is one image here. I just run this. Is it this is one column or not? Yes. Okay, then I take one more image. So this is image, and there is a source, and slash images, a image 2. This is one more column or not? Yes. And then take another image, image. So image is source. Okay, take another image, images. Okay, take another image here. So is it this is one more image, right? So each one is divided into how many? So this is number of rows and columns. Right? But how many columns you divided here? 3 columns. But can you place more? So number of images. So once you run this, so but what happened? Gap, row gap, row template gap is given how many pixels? 80. But if I remove this, still we have to increase, right? Or we just remove this row gap, row height. So how many rows are there? So 3 rows and 3 columns. Sorry, 2 rows and 3 columns. Because total how many items are there in the grid? Right. Total how many items are there in the grid? 6 items are there. Total how many items are there in the grid? 6 items. And these are equally divided into how many rows? Yes. Can you place the image? Image is, but suppose I want to place the text on the top of which one? Image. Can I place the text on the top of image? No. If I place text here, then the text will become one item. Is a child item of which one? Grid contain. Because of that, you are taking this inside what? Because of that, you are taking this inside what? Division. This is one division. Can you place the text on the top of this? Yes. So this is text. I'm writing this is what here? Text. So this is a text. This is one division. Okay, now can I display the text on the top of this? Directly, no. You have to take this as one. What is this? Division. You have to take this as one division. And this is what you can display on the top of the, yes, this is what here? Text. Can you see the text on the top of the image? Yes. You want the text at the top of the image as well as the bottom of the image. Okay. Yeah, you can display directly. right? But you cannot display the text directly. Now, suppose without division, if I'm writing this is a text, this is a text, so will it take this as one more item or not? Yes. Now this is one more column, right? Because of that, you are trying to divide this into what? Another. So division is grouping elements or not? Yes. Dividing is nothing but grouping the elements. You try to group this element. Now this is what again? Text. Ring honor. So you are trying to organize by dividing into a number of rows and columns. Okay. Yes. I'll tell you more about this, like how to work with this grid. Grid is not over, right? So some more properties are there related with the grid. But we'll see that not today, but we'll see on Monday that, right? So today we'll stop it here and Monday we'll continue this.